In this lesson, we're going to look at how to play the changes through the 5-4-1 turnaround of a typical blues shuffle. Now, for most of what we're doing in this series, we're working towards being able to play over the jazz blues changes, which involves a different kind of turnaround that we're going to look at in the very next lesson in this series. But right now, we're going to look at how to take the swing scale and apply it to all three chords of a 1-4-5 blues. And there are two reasons to do this. One is that even if you learn to play swing, you might still want to apply these ideas about eighth note flow and the swing scale and all this other stuff to some more traditional Chicago or Texas blues stuff that you're playing. The other is that after the swing period and after the bebop period, there's a time in sort of the jazz chronology, late 50s through the mid 60s, where a lot of records were made in a style most people call hard bop. And this involved taking a lot of the ideas from bebop and infusing them, like sort of reaching back from before swing and before bebop to lots of more traditional kind of rootsy down-home blues sounds. And so a lot of recordings from that period from people like Lee Morgan and Hank Mobley and Stanley Turrentine and people like that. There's sort of a reversion to the 5-4-1 turnaround on some of the tunes because it's sort of associated with earlier styles of jazz and a sort of more soulful, funky sound. So there's a lot of times, a lot of situations where you can hear jazz musicians who can burn over the jazz blues changes, applying those same ideas to a more straightforward 5-4-1 kind of chord progression. So that's another good reason to look at that. So we're going to play in the key of F this time. So the 1, 4, and 5 are going to be F, B flat, and C. And we already have a fingering for, we've looked at how to play. Very first thing we did in the first lesson in this series was play the B flat swing scale. And then we looked at how to play a swing scale in B flat in the upper position where the root is here under the middle finger. So if we come down here to an F, we can play an F swing scale right here. And that just leaves C. We've got F, we've got B flat, the 4, and then we need C. Now, without going too far afield, we can play working from this C here at the 5th fret of the 3rd string. Here's root 2, flat 3, 3, 4, flat 5, 5. And then down here we've got flat 7, 6, and 5. So if you just play this, it should feel really similar to the upper position. If you were in C, you'd be here. So it's a very similar feeling fingering. And if you wanted to keep going further up, here's 6, flat 7, and root. If you want to keep going down, here's 4, flat 3, 3, root. So you can play in that octave too. So now we've got the C swing scale, we've got a B flat swing scale, and we've got an F swing scale. Now, one of the best ways to practice getting from scale to scale is to practice playing over the turnaround to the blues. Because in the space of 4 bars, you have all 3 of the chords in the chord progression. So if we just work on playing from C to B flat to F, using the swing scale for each chord, we'll get a real workout in knowing how to get from scale to scale as the chords go by. And the idea is that you can, by playing a specific swing scale for each chord, then throughout the whole chord progression, you can really articulate the sound of what chord you're on at any given time by using the swing scale that goes with that chord. So whenever you're on F, you play the F swing scale. When you're on B flat, you play the B flat swing scale. When you're on C, you play the C swing scale. And you don't have to do that all the time. It just means that you can grab those sounds when you want to. Maybe you're just playing a bunch of pentatonic blues. But if you want to get the sound of the chord you're on, you can do that. And in fact, just going back to what I was saying about the hard bop period in jazz, that's a really common sound. There's a lot of contrast created by alternating between the blues sound and the changes. There's a great moment in Horace Silver in his autobiography, and he was one of the architects of the hard bop sound, pianist Horace Silver. And he's talking about when he was putting together a new version of his band, and he said, you know, I liked this guy, this saxophone player, because he could play the bebop and he could play funky. Basically, he could play the changes and he could play the blues. And that synthesis of those two sounds, those two sounds playing off each other, is a big part of the hard bop sound. So let's check out how it works. I've made a jam track that's just the turnaround, so from 5 to 4 to 1, C to B flat to F. And I'm going to roll it and then sort of just talk about some strategies for how to practice getting these three sounds under your fingers, these three different swing scales. So here's the track. And the first thing you want to do is just find the root of each scale on the downbeat in time with the track. And if that's too hard, then you turn the track off, and you just make sure you know where C and B flat and F are, the roots of the scale you're playing. And then you might also want to make sure that you can play that F in both registers. So there's the other F, the lower octave of it. So that's cool. Now you're oriented and you know where you're going to get those fingerings. So the next thing to do would be to play the root and the third. Just knowing that where the root and the third are. And it's never too early to start playing the stuff the way that you really would, like sliding into the third. So then you try to flip it, third into the root. And that requires a certain amount of thinking ahead. You've got to picture where the root is and then start with the third that goes with that root. Start to make it a little more musical. Play a little pickup. And now you're really thinking ahead because you're thinking rhythmically, you're thinking and 4 and 1 and 4 and 1 and 4 and 1 and. All right, so you're playing those phrases that we've been talking about for the last couple of lessons. Then you start thinking about where's the fifth. You know, can you get to the fifth first starting from the root? So maybe again, trying to make it musical, right? So it's root, going to the third, the fourth, and the fifth. 3, 4, 5, like that. So gradually trying to build it into phrases, but you're always trying to play the same thing on each chord. And then maybe the seventh. So I'm coming down from the seventh to, let's see, coming down from the seventh. So the 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, and over to the root. So you're just slowly building it up so that you can find these different phrases. And that, what I just did is a very condensed version maybe of what you'd be doing in terms of practicing these things, because you'd want to maybe stop the recording, sit there and figure out like, well, where is the seventh? Oh, it's here. When I'm on F, it's here. And here's the scale I can come down. Okay, cool. And how am I going to phrase it? Well, I'm going to go and 1 and 2 and 3 and then you got to work it out on all three fingerings, right? Each scale, each root. So that is a way to start making it, really articulating exactly what's going on, one scale for each chord of where you are. But you're still trying to take into account the swing sound and the sound of the swing scale and the phrasing, the idea that you're playing these same kind of pickup phrases, all that kind of stuff. Now we can take this idea of changing scales for every chord in the turnaround and combine it with the idea of eighth note flow. So we get this one smooth line that carries all the way from the 5 to the 4 through to the 1 chord. And that might sound like this. I'll just play it without even the track because you'll be able to hear the changes go by. 1, 2, 3. Right, so we're climbing up on the C. And then as the chords go down from C to B flat, the line we're playing continues to go up. And then as the chords go back up to, from B flat up to F, the line on the F chord is going to go down. So not only are we creating this like series of resolutions, each lick resolves into the next one, but we create contrast by having the line, the direction of the lick, go kind of in the opposite direction from the way it feels like the chords are going. So let me play this over the turnaround so you can hear it in context, and then I'll kind of explain exactly where the lick is going. Okay, so for C, we're starting off on the 5th to the 6th, the root, that's a pickup phrase, and then we have flat 3 to 3 to 4, flat 5, 5, 3, root, chromatically up to the 3rd of B flat, to the 5th, flat 7, 9, root, flat 7, 5th, 3, and then root on F. 5th, flat 7, 6, 5, 4, flat 3, 3, root, 5. So let me play a whole chorus of the blues in F. And when I get to the turnaround, I'll drop in this particular set of moves. Here we go. So once you have these 3 scales down, you have all the scales you need to play over the entire progression. So you could then go and start to do some of these sequencing exercises and work out some of these licks over the whole chord progression, especially looking at the spots that we looked at already in a previous lesson about where to put the 8th note flow. And you could start to be more specific about using 8th note flow with the 3 different scales that we've got, not just the home scale or the scale of the key that we're in. So that's the turnaround. That's how to play the changes on the turnaround over a shuffle. Hope you have fun working on some of those ideas. Coming up next, we're going to look specifically at the swing turnaround and how jazz musicians play the blues over the 2/5 turnaround of a swing blues. So that's coming up next. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Thanks for watching. I'm David Hamburger, and I'll see you next time.